Hey everybody, it's Yvonne from Western Star Art and Where I'm getting ready to read chapter 9 of my dad's book. It's a little bit longer chapter and him and his sister on an adventure. We'll see where they get to. I don't care if you go, she says, just don't get on a snake, that's all. There's a lot of copperheads around these hills, rattlers too, once in a while. She gave us a couple of her big biscuits with butter and sugar on them. We munched on them as we moseyed along. On the way, we scared up a turkey hen and some of her half-grown wild turkeys. They took off like a bat out of hell and gone. It about scared the crap out of me till I saw what it was. Flies and skeeters were bad, and the dog gnats were always flying in my mouth and my eyes. They were a pain in the butt. We finally made it to the graveyard. There were rows of the longest graves I ever saw, 'cause the ones at Wheeler's and others were short compared to these. They had long rocks with names like Crow, Lyle, Samson, Sweet Talk, Annabelle, Tyler, and so forth. They must have been Mosays or Mandingos, 'cause they were really tall. Then there was Florbell McKinley, Captain John Everett McKinley, plus some kids named Nancy and John III. The captain was CSA 7th Infantry, North Carolina. My ma told a story about the way it was when where we lived was being farmed. All of the men folk were taken into the army during the Civil War, and only the women lived with the children. They were all so hungry that they cried for food. Granny would tell them to take some cool water, and that's what Ma said she was told. There was nothing else to eat. It must have been pretty bad back then, too. One thing that I remember well is the way the pines sang to you up on Hyco Hill. Man, when the breeze blew through them, they made a haunting and lovingly sound to you, like you had died and gone to heaven or something. Even as a boy, I loved it. I mentioned it to Sue, and she said, well, it ain't nothing but the wind blowing. These people can't come out of the ground. They are gone forever. I don't believe in haints. That's a bunch of bull put out by the old folks. Maybe, I lowed, but I love to hear the pines talk to me. About that time, we heard a crashing coming through the brush. Gush, gosh, Molly, she hollers. Scale one of those trees, as all hell has broken loose somewhere. I went up a dogwood that weren't so big, and Sue climbed some kind of a sapling. About this time a bull breaks through the trees, and he was a lowing and bellering and gouging at the trees left and right. He come up on my tree and shoved it once or twice. I weren't about to fall out. I was froze to that tree. He had a short piece of chain hanging around his neck. I guess that he belonged to Gus Poller up on the holler a ways. Our old milk cow must be bullin', she lows. I just hope he goes after her and leaves us alone. I sure don't like them mad bulls. Since we were already down here, let's go on down to Hyco. It's just down the road here. That's all right with me, I says. So we went down the hill to the creek or river, they called it. We passed an old cabin that was half submerged in the hillside. Neither of us knew why it was half buried. We saw a copperhead laying on the cool ground between two logs and some rocks. I guess they were a lot more. We ought to get a stick and frail that snake, Sue said. I wanted to go down and wade in the river, so we left him alone. We slid down the bank and landed in the river. A water moccasin slid in the water and swam across. We didn't pay much attention to it. I rolled up my breeches legs, and Sue's dress was already above the water, so she didn't have a problem. We watched the Red Horse River fish make their beds and breed and lay eggs. They were so pretty. There would be a whole bunch of them on a round pile of rocks, just flittering. Then a pair would break off out a ways from the crowd, and then they would come together, and I guess they would breed or whatever fish do. Then they would join the crowd, and she would lay her eggs in the rocks. Then two more would repeat what the first did. Why, he's a breeding that fish, Sue says when they made that turn. You stay here at this end, and I'll go up to where they turn and see what's going on. All right, I says. She gets up there and hunkers down, ready to watch when they make the turn. Two more take off, and she sees what they do when they turn. Yes, sir, that's what they're doing. They're a bumping butts together when they turn and come to the end of the trail. Well, I'll be, I lowed. Let's go on up the creek and see what we can see, Sue says. We come across this snake that was trying to swallow a catfish. It was a sizable fish, and that snake had him in his mouth up to the fin and the backbone. and could go no further. I learned later that they lay and digest the food right off the bone. But then at 6 years old, I weren't versed in that. What you reckon we ought to do with that snake? Sue asked. Why, I don't know, I lowed. Seems we should take a stick and beat him just 'cause he's a snake. Now that idea sure appeals to me here and now, Sue says, and she commenced looking around for a killing stick. She whacks him with the broad hand stroke. Kapow, kapow. Her face was redder than a pair of red flannels hung out to dry. I fixed him good, didn't I? She asked me. That you did, I replied. Well, after that we walked on down the creek and looked at some fish in the pool. They were a-swimming around like all get out. I wish we could get some of them fish, she says, but if we take them home, Ma will know that we come to Heiko and she'll beat both of us. I sure can hear that, I says. What the heck, we'll catch them and then throw 'em back. How's that? Why, that's the best thing I'd heard yet, I says. But how you going to get them without a hook? I popped up. You just watch a fisherman or a fisherwoman, whatever. She had a straight pin in her dress, and she raveled a piece of string off her dress. She pins the pin and ties the string onto it and gets a little stone and ties it next to the hook. Then she gets a dead stick for the cork and an old limb for the pole. Now, let's go over here and rake under the leaves and find us a worm, she says. I dug one up, and she wouldn't touch him. I hate a worm too much like a snake, she says. Give him to me, I says, and I'll put him on the pin. It hain't hit the water hardly when a naughty head hit her full force. She let him swallow it good, and she pulled back on the hook. That fish come out of the water slapping his tail and a-trying his best to get back in the water. Woo-wee! Ain't he a nice one, she hollers. Woo-wee! That's one fine naughty head. You take him off the hook and throw him back in the hole over there. She pointed to a hole behind us. We were just having a grand old time and hadn't watched the time, and it had done passed us by. It was about milking time before we knew it. We discarded our hook and started humping it back to the home place. It was dusk when we passed the graveyard, but I didn't see no haint. We sort of figured that we were in for big trouble when we started down the hill to the spring. We saw Ma a-coming up the hill. It didn't take much for Ma to whoop you for anything. This time she looked like she had a lot on her mind. When she saw us, she pulled a frail and began skinning the leaves off it. You just as well get ready. I'm going to whoop the pants off of you both. Staying out this late and a-worrying a body to death. She come to me first and pulls my britches down to the bare butt, and she got my head under her arm and commenced to pile the timber to my behind. I was a-hollering to beat all, but it didn't do any good. She just kept pouring it on till my butt was redder than fire and a-burning like it was on a bed of red ants. She started out asking me if I would do it again, and I was saying I wouldn't. Then she switches questions and asked me somewhere. I was a-saying yes for no, and she was a-firing me up some more. Sorry. Finally, she had enough of me and started for Sue. Now, Sue was big for her age and not puny like me, and she didn't want no whipping. Ma pulled another switch and skunked the leaves off of it. Sue was a-saying, Don't whip me, Ma. I hain't done anything to get a whooping for, and I'm too big for you to be a whooping on. You don't ever get too big for me to skin your hide, and that's what I aim to do. She reaches for Sue, and she dodged out of the way. Well, sir, Mob's club had fell, and she was hotter than a firecracker. She pounced onto Sue and launched her biggest attack. Ma was a strong woman and agile at this time. She pounced onto Sue and bore her to the ground. She got a hammerlock on Sue's neck and stood up. She was a-trying to hold her dress down because she knew what Ma had in mind. It didn't make any difference, so Ma pulled her dress up over her butt and commenced to sort of putting it up under her. That switch sounded like hisso, hisso, hisso. After Ma gives out, she lets her loose. Now both of you get in front of me and march to the house. I was a whip boy in body, but not in spirit, so I tramped on in front of her. My Ma and me never did make it together somehow. We just was never close. But it didn't make it or break it for me. I figured both Sue and I would have sore butts for a while. When we come up to the house, Pa was there, and he says, I see that you're bringing them in. Yeah, and they both have a hot butt. That will learn them not to stay out too late. Where'd they go, Pa asked. They went down to Heiko without telling me. They might have gotten drowned or something. Oh, I doubt it. That Heiko is pretty dry this time of year. Sue and me neither went to supper or breakfast. We were pretty sore and didn't get about any too good. That Sunday morning, Pa said Aunt Fan is sick and in a bad way, and I'm going to see her. I'll take May and Albert with me. She always liked to see them 'cause they were the oldest. Grandpa come out and says he wanted to go too. I want to see Fanny if she's sick, he lows. Pa says, you ain't in no shape to be going nowhere. If Fanny's sick, I aim to go, Grandpa says. You always had a hard head, Pa said to his pap. Get yourself ready if you want to go with me. I aim to be getting on the road in a short spell. I'll be ready when you are, Grandpa says, and they all got ready and Pa checked out his tea. It was all right, I guess, 'cause he didn't say anything. Aunt Fanny lived in Pine Knot, which was a ways down the road from Bushy Fork, on the Guest Road or off Guest Road. Bushy Fork was a place where I had been born. So Ma says it was just a wide place in the road with a general store, a blacksmith shop, a filling station for all them Model Ts, and a high school, and a baseball field. Ma always told of the times I fell in the bluin' water and stayed in it for a spell. When she got me out, I had to be drained off of the water. I think I would have been better off if she would have let me stay in it. No such luck. A feller by the name of Satterfield ran the general store. I remember when I was just a little shave of a feller, and a man giving me a stick of horehound candy. 'Twas quite tasty, but I liked the kind with peanuts in the stick, or peanut butter in the stick. Anyways, that's on the way to Aunt Fan's. She married a draft named Drury Daniels. He had died back up the road a ways. Aunt Fanny was living by herself now. They all got in the Gitney and commenced to turn around. Nick was a-barking and a-trying to get in the car with Grandpa. I got a hold of him and talked to him to quiet him down. They were out of the yard and I let him go. You and me will go for a hunt for something, I told him, and we went off to the hedgerow on one of the fields. I talked and patted his head. The hedgerow ran along one of the fields that hadn't been tended in a while. A couple of skeeters ran out in front of me, but Nick paid no mind to them. I didn't want to stray too far from the home 'cause my butt was still a-burning from the last time, and Ma didn't have any trouble thinking up something else to hide you about. Anyways, we come up on this rock pile. I guess the slaves had piled them when they had cleared the place long ago. Well, sir, Nick started to roll the hair up on the back of his neck and growl. He stuck his nose in a hole and smelled, and he barked and started to dig in the rock pile. I fell into helping him move the rock, and a rat ran out, and he caught him and killed it. So far, I'm not stumbling terribly, but a bit. In my mind, that made him bigger than Rin Tin Tin, 'cause he was just an old shepherd dog. Not much account for anything. Still, that didn't satisfy him, and he kept on digging and growling. I helped him all I could. I moved a rock and a copperhead poking out and struck. He missed me by a little, so I stepped back. Nick saw him and started to move around the snake and worry him, trying to get him to strike at him. Finally, he made his mistake. He thought he had old Nick, but that's what the dog wanted him to do, strike at him. Then he made his move. As soon as he was stretched out, Nick, like greased lightning, caught the copperhead by the neck so he could bite him. Then he began to whoop him back and forth and beat him against the ground. He frailed that snake till he was crazy and couldn't move. Then he went up and down him and broke him into pieces. After that, he chewed the snake up and he went and threw up. Every time he killed a snake, he did that and then laid under the tree. It was late in the fall, and the birds were all going or gone, and the leaves were falling and turning different colors. Some puffy clouds were floating around in the sky. I laid on my back and watched them, wondering how the rain came out of them and why it came and when it came. Being 6 is a pretty bad age. You don't know anything but wonder about a whole lot. Since the fishing trip, Sue had not come around me and I had stayed clear of her. We had a pretty bad experience and it took time to get over it. Ma didn't seem to pay it no mind either way. She went on beating the stovepipe and singing hymns. That night, Pa and all of the older ones came back. Grandpa stayed over with Aunt Fan. Pa told Ma that Aunt Fan was in a bad way and he thought she was going to die. I don't think that she will last a couple of days the way she is. Well, we all have to go, Ma says. Makes no difference when that is. We all have to go and stand before our Maker and account for all of our sins and our good too. Oh, when the saints go marching in, I'm just going to have to come off with a little of that song. So Ma leans back and lets her rip. Oh, when the saints, oh, when the saints, oh, when the saints go marching in. Yes, Lord, I want to be in that number when the saints go marching in. I want all of you to bow your heads whilst I say a word or two. After we bowed, Ma started in. Lord, she hollered, we come before you in sickness and sin, and there sure is a lot of sinning going on around here too. But save us and show us the way so we can come out of this and lead better lives for you. Our kin's laying in a bed of affliction. Reach down to her with your hand and take her out of this world of pain and sorrow. Ma was really getting into it about now. Sweep her home to a home where there's no pain and death. Lift her sins from her and let her walk the streets of gold and sing you praises. I know, Lord, that you'll do what is right for her and you'll help us all where it is needed. These things I ask in Jesus' name, amen. Well, we all had cramped necks after that coming from Ma, but we all said amen too. That was a powerful prayer, Rose. Pa says, I hope it'll help Aunt Fan to the pearly gates. I hope it will help some others too, Ma said. Pa didn't answer her, but he went out to the barn. It was a getting about bedtime, so I went and got me some water and washed my feet. They got so dirty during the day, and a body had to wash them when I got back to the house. Ma was a-singing one of the songs that she always sang in the evening time. It went like this. The day has passed and gone, the evening shade appears. Oh, may we all remember well the night of death draws near. We lay our garments by and upon our beds whilst we rest. Please protect us from all harm till early morning light appears, or something to that effect. Ma sang long meters, and she really put herself into it. When she really started to getting down, it would make your hair stand on end and your neck begin to crawl. After all the commotion, we all went to bed. I listened to the whippoorwills a while, and then I went to sleep. The next morning I woke up early and went down to the barnyard. The mules and the horses were cutting up and having a blast. They had not had much work lately, so they were full of piss and vinegar. Bob would jump up and clear all of his feet off the ground, kick out with his hind legs, and let a keen fart when he hit the ground. Annie, she was a black mule with a Roman nose. She would run down to the creek and back fast as she could. Then she'd spin around and make the same run again. Then her and Bob would race. Charlie was older, and he would just watch them spend all that energy and munched on some hay. There was an old crib there, and I was going to give some corn and throw it to the animals. As I opened the door, there was a couple of rats in there bigger than squirrels. I picked up a stick and hit one of them, and they attacked me. One of them bit me on the leg. Nick heard me, and he come on a dead run. He led in them rats like a mob of cats. In a few seconds, they were raw meat, and Nick was looking for more. He was one hell of a dog when he wanted to be. I was so glad that he was there at that time. I nursed my leg a while and then forgot about it. By that time, Albert and Wright was coming down to feed the stock, and I went to the house for breakfast. Ma fried some ham that morning and had red-eye gravy to sop up the black-strap lasses and butter for the lasses. I love the color of the lasses in the gravy, and I like to mix them up. I never did like the lasses themselves. I ate the ham and sopped the gravy. We went off to school after a while and learned all about my ABCs and half chick and so forth. About the same as the other days. Wheeler's church was in a holler in distance to the school. I remember looking out every once in a while from the schoolroom. We all marched over there every day and got water. It was one of the best parts of the day, making that water boy go up and down and get the water for us to drink. Things went on about the same as always for the next few days. Then Pa comes home from Aunt Annie Willis's and says that Aunt Fan was dead. I didn't shed any tears because I didn't know her that well. Rosa May did, though, and she cried for her a spell. Aunt Fan had given her a brooch that her husband had given her when he had to go off to the Civil War. She wanted Rosa May to pin it on her when she died. The next day we all gathered up and went to see Aunt Fan when she was laid out. There weren't much to see, just an old woman that had put in a hard life and had come to the end of her row. They had her laid out nicely, though. She had on a dark dress with a white frilly collar. Pa took me by the hand and led me up to the coffin. Then he took me outside under the shade tree. There was a girl there about 4 years older than me. She told me her name was Nellie Porterfield, and her mama was Mattie. Mattie was Pa's sister. Then she married Ed Porterfield, Pa's oldest sister, that is. When we got on pretty good, and she told me, let's go down to the barn, and I went with her. She scratched under some stuff and got some pretty dishes and silverware that she had buried. She told me that the Daniels would take all of Aunt Fan's stuff when they closed the house. If you want, I'll help you get some. I don't know anything about that sort of stuff, I said. I don't see any use for getting any. Suit yourself, she says, but the draft folks, Uncle Drury, will take it all. The old man had it, so Aunt Fan's folks didn't get anything after she died. She could live here, but when she died, all the property went back to the Daniels. We played around for a while, and Pa comes to take me home. I said goodbye to my new play friend and got in the Gitney. We stopped by Mr. Willis's store. He had married my Pa's youngest sister, Annie. The old man wore a full beard and had a black hat. I remembered this pretty well. Anyways, he gave all of us a cold drink and a piece of candy. I thought I was sitting in high cotton, but, well, I drew on mine, and it flew up my nose. Wait a minute, he lowed. This is the way you do it, sort of let a little air in on both sides. He showed me several times, and I got the hang of it, and it went just about right. Ma never did learn. Every time she drank, she'd just suck and then blew it out her nose. The candy was very good, though. It was some sort of king of chocolate and coconut. Aunt Annie was very pretty and probably 25 his senior. He died shortly after that, and I never saw him any more alive, but I really did enjoy the candy and drink with nobody hollering at me. After the refreshments, we piled into the Gitney. Pa had gotten some gas from Mr. Willis, and we headed for home with the wind blowing in our faces. We all got home and had supper of clabber and cornbread and went to bed for some well-earned sleep. And that was chapter 9. I hope that you can understand me. I'm still kind of messing up on my words, but hopefully I get better. Anyway, I hope you have a great day, and I will see you later with a reading of chapter 10. Bye.